Hello and good morning, everyone, and happy Sunday to you. So, hopefully, you guys are out enjoying the weather. And if you're somewhere where it's raining, hopefully, you're inside creating great memories with people. And uh, welcome to this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. I am Tony Lynch. I am your host, and as always, we have an amazing guest for you guys. Now, before I bring him up here, I would just want to give you guys a big thank you for those who have subscribed to the YouTube channel. That means an awful lot to us. And those who are out there sharing it. This helps us get the content out there and reach a lot more people. Now, before I bring up my guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. But before we get started, if you haven't already, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And without further ado, I'm bringing on my next guest, Jason. Jason, welcome to the show this morning.
Thank you for having me, Tony, man. I've been so excited to be on the show with you.
Yes. Since the first time that we talked, man, we just vibe, right? Great conversation, good times.
Yeah. I think our energies really align pretty well, especially even around the grief, the topic of grief and just life in general.
Yes, man. And, when we talked, you actually shed some light to me, man, about what a somatic grief therapist was and the work that you do. And I thought that was pretty amazing, right? And it's going to give people an idea of the other resources that are available to them as they go along their grief journey as well. Now, before we get into that, tell people who you are and where you're from and about the
work. So my name is Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki. I live in New Jersey in a town called Garwood. It's a small little town. And I lost my sister Lauren in a car accident in 1998. That's what sort of brought me into the grief world. But I didn't want to deal with my grief for a really long time. And so I just sort of put it on the back burner. And it started creating challenges in my life. And then I realized, I have to start facing these things. These things are too big to just keep pushing down and pushing down and pushing down. So a few years after she passed, I'm like, all right, if I don't deal with my grief, then it's going to cause a lot of problems for a really long time. And so it really got me to start to look into myself, start to get more comfortable in my own skin, start to look at like how her death actually made me realize that if I kept eating the way I was eating and living the way I was living, I was going to follow in her footsteps because my health was not on my priority list. My body, I was very overweight and going down the path of that direction. And I was like, if I didn't change those behaviors, it would have caused a similar outcome for me earlier than maybe it should have. So it really forced me to really shift my diet, shift my exercise routine, take off some weight, be healthier, be more vibrant, get more vitality. And that in turn helped me start to deal with my grief, which is why I brought it from my personal practice into my professional life.
I love that, man. I definitely love that. And, thank you for taking the chance, on your grief and actually dealing with it, right? I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people when it comes down to grief, especially when it comes down to men. We're taught to push these things and suppress it, right? And to deal with it. And in turn, we struggle. We struggle in silence. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, especially those that are closest to us, right? They get so used to seeing us, right? And depending on us to be the strong ones for them. Inside, we fall apart. And you mentioned a few things, eating right, exercising. People don't understand how important that is. Those things do affect the way that our body functions and deal with the suppressed grief that we have, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, like what you said, as being a guy, right? Men and women express their grief in a little bit of a different way. Women tend to be, and this is just a total generalization, and but like tend to be a little bit more external, like with their grief, where guys have to we learn to not cry and all of those things that were conditioned as little boys, to be strong, don't cry, be a man, suck it up, move forward. all that conditioning is just locked in our bodies. And unless we release it, then, and then on top of it, as a bereaved sibling, we get the thing that we also have to be strong for our parents as well. So as a bereaved sibling sometimes is invalidated because we have to be there for our parents. We have to be there for our mom and our dad. They lost their child, and that's so horrible. But hey, I lost my sister. That's just as horrible as my parents losing their kid. But my grief got no validation whatsoever. So that's why it took me so long to get to dealing with it, because I was like, well, my grief isn't anything compared to my parents or compared to my mom, my dad. And so I couldn't be strong for them and deal with and break down in front of them, because it was a mixed message that I was getting.
Yeah. I got a question before I ask my question. Explain to the audience what a somatic grief therapist is.
Sure. So a somatic grief therapist, the soma is just the body. And when I look at grief, I look at it from a physiology first approach. So we have to look at how we're taking care of our bodies. That comes down to not just movement. There's a push right now. Everyone's talking about, somatic therapy. And it's just focused on the movement component of it, which is important, but it's not the big picture. The big picture is, how do we take care of our bodies overall? Are we giving ourselves good nutrition? Are we eating clean, healthy foods? Are we moving our bodies? That's where the movement comes in. And also, are we sleeping well? Research is showing that people need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep, of good, deep, good quality sleep. And if you're not getting sleep, you're actually doing your body a disservice, because it's showing that good sleep may have a bigger effect on your overall health than both diet and exercise. So, and grief, as many of us have experienced, cause a whole disruption in our sleeping patterns. So we have to look at the body as a whole unit, and keeping it healthy and as vibrant as you can really do a lot to help with the grief.
Okay. See, the doctors would be mad at me. I swear they would be mad at me. I probably total within a week, maybe 6 hours of sleep total.
Right.
So, because I'm constantly going, man. Being up all night, I'm constantly working, trying to make sure that everything is okay. Making sure that I have all my ducks in a row.
Right.
So but that also comes from something that I developed, in understanding, how to run a business.
Right.
So I never stop when I'm tired. I always stop when I'm done. Right. What I'm saying? Like, I gotta continue this, and then I can go to sleep. But unfortunately, when I do continue, the sun is coming up.
Yeah. Well, and that goes into like a second part of like what my somatic grief therapy work is all about. So we have to first work with building the body up and getting it nice and strong. But as you're experiencing, your brain affects your ability to sleep. So your thought patterning that I have to do this work, which is really important. But if you're running on fumes or you're not thinking clearly, you could be way more effective in the hours that you're working if you get the proper sleep. So our body affects what we think, but also what we think affects our body. So we have to look at it from both sides, because if we only look at, okay, right, great, my body is healthy, but my mind is doing things like driving me forward and forcing me to stay up really late at night because I don't think I can get all the things that I want to get done in the day, then that puts a toll on the body. So we have to kind of look at that relationship between how our body affects our mind and how our mind affects our body.
I love that. I love how the balance part comes in, and I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress.
me too. We're all like, when we know better, we can do better, right? And so,
very true.
So it's this growth mindset. We never stop. And I think that's also a thing about the grief as well, is that we think that, after a year, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be cured. I'm going to be whatever. But it's really a growth process, right? Like when in a year, you're at a different place than you are right now. In 2 years, you're at a different place right now. So it's that you're never done. You're always working. You should always be working to grow and expand and learn more and be more, because, and that's my philosophy, and that's what I help my clients with, is like, how do you continue to grow even while dealing with grief? Not to say every day is going to have its own set of challenges, but how can you see those challenges as opportunities of really growing into who you're becoming? Right. And so who we're becoming, once we're there, it's who we are. And then we have to continue to grow and become someone new.
Right.
Right. That's a growth mindset. So
yeah, I love that, because I read a lot of books on growth mindset. And we touched on a little bit, about how to market those things. So I'm constantly educating myself, but also putting those things into actionable strategies about how, how to be better and things like that. And, so it's just one of those things. I'm always curious about how can I take everything and move it up without being destructive towards other people,
Right.
There's a lot that goes into that,
Yep. Well, and I also talk about that exact topic with grief, right? Like when we have an emotion like anger, let's say, right? We can use that in a very creative way, even to ourselves, right? Or we can use it in a very destructive way. And so we have to really be able to realize that even our feelings can be filtered into good action, into creative action, into growing rather than destroying. Because easily anger can be one of those things that can really destroy you. It could hurt other people if you're lashing out. But if you take that anger and direct it into a creative energy, like, creating a foundation or podcasting, or like doing the stuff that you're doing, like you're taking that energy and refocusing it into a creative force rather than a destructive force.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's really important for people to understand. Like, we associate grief with the sorrow, the depression, the hurt that comes along with it, right? And then those questions that actually results in the anger, right? Because, and I'm only speaking from the point of view of me being a male, right? In society, we don't know how to articulate what's going on with us. So anger is our go-to, and it's understanding that underlining language that comes along with that. And doing podcasting and having various people on to discuss the different ways, of how that shows up, and the language that's associated with it. Because I learned so much from everyone that I have on here. Hopefully my audience learns a lot from it as well, because I was just talking with someone on a podcast the other day, and we started off in one general area, and by the time we got done, we had already added in 6 general areas where, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You're like, yeah, it can go this way, but it's a reminder to people, you have to do grief your way. Right? You know what I'm saying? Your avenue is going to spiderweb and go down these other different roads for you to explore your healing journey. And that, to me, that's important to understand, that there's no blueprint. There's no right or wrong way to do it. If you're self-medicating and things like that, I always suggest, hey, when you get to a point and you hit your version of rock bottom, go seek help. There's people out there that's willing to walk with you, but we want to catch them before it's too late. Right. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to bury no one else. I don't want to hear about someone else taking their lives because they're trying to fix the situation and not having the proper resources to be able to do that, or having the right people walk with them as they go along the journey, And so, I'm always excited to see people reach out and go, look, I can't do it. I can't do it alone.
No,
Because
and nobody should be doing it alone, right?
right,
Like you
right.
can't, I couldn't do it. I tried. I really did try to do it alone for a while, and
Mhm.
it just didn't serve me. It didn't get me anywhere. And then once like I started to kind of, really kind of reach out a little bit more and like learn different things from different people, like I studied yoga and meditation and mindfulness and personal development stuff. Like and I learned those from other people, right? And then I made it my own. And then I saw how it fit into the patterns that I was creating for myself, because we all create patterns even within our grief. And when we can observe those patterns and see how they function, we need to be aware of the patterns first, and then we can change them. And that goes with patterns of thinking, patterns of
Mhm.
languaging too. Like you were talking about, the
Right.
language, so important. Notice the words that you use, because the words that you use reflect the thoughts that you think. So if
Right.
you're always like, oh, this is terrible, this sucks, I just hate this thing, right? The energy of that is different than, oh, this is an opportunity, or wow, I'm really happy that this thing happened, or I'm really appreciative that this is happening in my life right now. And
Mhm.
so really looking at the language that we use is really critical to show what we focus on, because what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And they're both available at the exact same time, but it's which do you choose to focus on at any given moment. And when
Mm.
you can change your focus, you just change everything.
Nice, man. Nice.
Right.
Now, I want to get into your journey about
Okay.
how you get, because dude, you blow me away, you know what I'm saying? Because everything that you're saying, I totally agree with, right? And
Yep.
there's a lot to add on to there. But
Oh,
now, I want you to share your journey about how did you get into this work, but you know what I'm saying, those different things, and then we'll talk about the relationships that you had and what
yep.
those look like, especially being a bereaved sibling and everything, and watching how your parents grieve
Yep.
versus what I'm saying, and how did you manage those things?
Right. So that actually kind of combines into my story. So okay,
Hmm.
in 1998, my sister Lauren passed in a car accident. I was, let's see, let me just, I was 26 at the time. She was 24. I was considering going for a clinical PhD in psychology. I had studied psychology in college. I got my master's in psychology, and I was like, all right, I'm going to get a clinical PhD, because that was the way I thought I should do. And then my
Hmm.
sister passed away, and I realized that talk therapy was not going to really, it's helpful, but it wouldn't be the thing that really served me the most, because I knew exactly in 98, there was only really psychoanalysis and cognitive behavioral therapy. Those were the two main forms outside of like going to the church or the temple or a religious affiliated place. So I decided that I needed to shift gears. I was taking some yoga classes at the time, and I was like, "Oh, this thing is really helping me in a pretty substantial way in feeling good in my body." Even after my sister passed, I was like, I feel good, like physically, because the yoga practice was helping me with that. And then, just like we were talking about, what more could I do? What's the next step that I can do? So I then started to like meditate, and then I started to visualize. And then I said, oh, I better start changing my eating habits, because if I change my eating habits, that's going to make me stronger. That's going to make me leaner and fitter. So let me shift my eating habits. And then I went sort of down off the deep end. And then I started cleaning out like all of the body care products in my home and making sure I'm using environmentally friendly products, because like how we do one thing is how we do everything. And when we could connect more with our bodies and more with the earth, that just makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, I'm this is how I'm managing my grief through a physical practice, because it's getting me to move my body. It's getting me to shift and change the energy, because one of the fastest way to shift and change energy is to move. And I was like, this is amazing. And I was always thinking, like, how can I combine my psychology? Because I really feel there's a value in it, but not in like in a little bit of a different way, because we have to go and look at our past to see what patterns we've created from our past, but more importantly, how they affect our present. So I was trying to like think, how can I combine psychology with the stuff I'm learning in yoga and meditation? I took an energy healing class called polarity therapy, which is about balancing the different poles in the body, kind of like a light fixture. It's got a positive, a hot, and a grounding and a neutral wire. Like, so those are like the poles. Like, so I was like, oh, all of this stuff just started to kind of come into my experience. And then so now I'm going to fast forward to 2019, because this will show you how I got involved in the grief world on a more professional level. In 2019, I was teaching yoga at a grief conference in Philadelphia. And I was talking to one of the siblings, and I was like, why is everybody like really excited about coming to a grief conference? Because all of the siblings were like so jazzed. And the woman said, listen, I live in Michigan. There's no bereaved sibling support where I'm at. So I said, hey, after the conference, if I were to run a Zoom meeting with some bereaved siblings, would you join? She's like, absolutely. So I had about like 10 or 15 bereaved siblings on my first support group. I asked the question at the end of the meeting, when do you want to meet again? I thought they would say in a month, but what wound up happening is they said, hey, how's about next week? I said, oh, like you want to meet that quickly? They're like, yeah, we love talking to each other. We love connecting. We don't have this opportunity very often. So can we do it next week? I said, sure, let's give it a whirl and see how it goes. Right. That was 2019. I've met every Thursday night since 2019 with my group. And it's in fact grown. Now we have multiple meetings a week, not run by myself, but other people kind of stepped in and wanted to help and support the bereaved siblings. So we have like this really vibrant online bereaved sibling community that meets multiple times a week. So I was like, all right, that's super cool. What also I was noticing is, like, you were talking about how some people turn to like drugs and alcohol to help navigate their grief. And I was noticing that was a huge theme that was happening, and it was happening over and over and over again. And so here I am, Mr. Healthy Lifestyle, talking about diet and exercise and nutrition. And then I'm like looking at my fellow siblings, and they're like drinking and, doing other things. Now, no judgment around that, because listen, we all have to survive the way we have to survive. Right. But I'm like, there needs to be an example of somebody who lives a clean lifestyle that's also dealing with their grief, right? And not to say I have a beer and a glass of wine and every now and again. I'm not, but it's the habits that we do every day that are important. So, right. And so if you're drinking every day or you're doing any sort of drugs every day, that's one thing. If you're doing it now and again, in certain situations and have a handle on it, a whole different ball of wax, right? Like, so I needed to be the person that I wish I had 25 years ago. And I was sitting on the sidelines saying, there should be a person to do this and that. And I'm like, well, if the person is me, I have to be the one. So I had to get off the sidelines. I had to stop wishing for someone to come in. And I had to be that person that is the proponent for a healthy lifestyle, to help people manage their diet, their exercise, their movement, all areas of their body, plus their mindset as well. So in about 2 years ago is when I decided that, listen, I gotta do this. And so then everything came together for me. The yoga, the meditation, the mindfulness, the personal development, the energy healing, the yoga. And I just like wrapped it all together into the somatic grief therapy that I'm practicing now. So.
So I love that, man. I love that because, I just recently got back into doing yoga. And I tell you, there's some positions that I just don't fold in.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
as flexible as I used to be.
Yeah. Well, you have to start where you're at. Like that's really it. Like it's, you don't listen, if I were to go try to lift 100-pound dumbbell and do dumbbell curls, I couldn't be able to do that. I have to build up over time. I can do 50, 25 pounds and then 30 and then 40. So
Mm,
it's all about habit. It's all about getting back to the habits that you want to include. We're all doing habits consciously or unconsciously, right?
yeah,
Sitting and binge watching Netflix is a habit. At least it's one of my habits, and I know it's a habit, but
understood.
right, right, like it's a habit. I know, and also eating well is a habit. Eating processed foods is a habit. So
Mhm.
once we start to look at our habits, then we could start to challenge them and then break them and replace them with something else.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
But you can't do it all at once. You have to pick one thing at a time.
that's very, very true. And lifting weights is my jam. I recently, now, I moved into my new place, and found me a really good gym to go to. It's open 24 hours. So, um, early in the morning I'm near, and then I try to go there. I'm getting better about doing it, but I try to go 3 or 4 times out of the week,
Yep.
just to allow my body to rest and things like that. But I enjoy having the peace of mind, the calmness,
Yep.
and everything that comes along with it. And plus, I love the weight, right? I
Yeah.
love I love the heavier the weight for me, the better. I'm not saying that don't, for everyone out there, you do you, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't do what I do because uh, I just enjoy the pressure,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? It gives my body this release. And then when I'm done, there's this calmness goes along with it, and I go about my day,
Yeah. Well,
and eating right.
and that's exactly why, like, you have to have a body. That's why I believe a body's physiology first approach to grief, just
Mhm,
like what you're talking about, right? Like that lifting of the weights, putting that pressure on your muscles, putting that pressure on your bones, right? Like, and then having that sense of peace afterwards, right? That's exactly the reason why you I believe that we got to focus on our physiology first, even
mhm,
our body language. Like if you sit there with your shoulders rounded and hunched over like most people do at the computer, that
mhm,
that physiology affects how you feel, right? And then all of a sudden you bring your shoulders back, you lift your chest, you open up your heart. That changes your physiology too. And so when you change your physiology, you can definitely adjust how you feel and what you're experiencing, right? Like just like that same balance of everything that's wrong is available, but everything that's right is available, and your
mhm.
physiology can reflect like how what you're focusing on.
Right. And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I always recommend, like, when I work with the men that I work with, I'm a certified personal trainer, and so they get to come and work out with me,
Yeah.
twice a week. And the only reason why I do it twice a week with the men is because I have a huge influx of men, and so I want to make sure that I am holding space with them and giving them the attention that they need, um, while we're working out. Because a lot of times, what ends up happening is that this is what a lot of people don't understand when it comes down to men. We we have to choose a place where we're comfortable with having those conversations at, right? And
Yeah.
when we're lifting weights, it's a great way for it's not only a release, but it's a great way for us to sit around and talk about the things that are going on in our lives, right? It's a way for
Hmm.
us to connect on a
Yep.
different level, whether if you're fishing, hunting, gardening, or anything like that. Meeting people where they are, right?
Yeah.
One thing that, when it comes down to anyone, when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you carry a certain vibe with you, and it attracts people. It attracts the right people into your circle.
Yep.
And so it's everything leads into, like you
Yeah.
said, everything leads into everything else. You have to change your mindset about a lot of these things, breaking the stigma around mental health, grief and things like that, and being open
Yeah.
about how we feel.
Well,
Now
and
that
I think
leads me into my next question with you, and I
sure.
would just want to go back a little bit,
Yeah.
to ask what's, talk about the relationship that you have with your sister, because I see the smile on your face, and I'm like, when
Yeah.
you talk about her, you light up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. And that's kind of where that wasn't the case when she was alive all the time. I'm not gonna lie. We had a very tumultuous relationship. When we were brother and sister, we fought and we argued and we didn't see eye to eye all the time. So and anyone that tells you that they had this and I know people do this in their grief, and so if this is you, just be aware of it. But a lot of people put their sibling or their person that died up on a pedestal, and
Mm,
they can do no wrong. And in most people's cases, that is not true. There, you've had the fights, you've had the arguments, right? Right. And I know it was out of love, right? Like I know it was out of love. We loved each other, but we didn't always get along. We had an up and down relationship, and I think it's important for people to know that, because not some brothers and sisters are super close, some sisters are close, some brothers are close, but some aren't. And it's okay if you didn't have a great relationship with your sibling, and you can I always say my relationship is better now because one, I have the last word all the time, and two, right? Like it's out of love,
right.
and there's none of that our human stuff like gets involved. And so yeah, we had definitely a tumultuous relationship when she was alive. She's been my inspiration for hopping into this work. In fact, on my website, and I'm using as a branding, her Hebrew name was dōTERRA, which translates into bee. And so on all of my somatic grief therapy things, you'll see a little bee above. That's my sort of my logo.
Yeah.
And it's because she's the one who's inspiring me to do this work. And that's and to use the creative and the service part of it, like that of my grief, that is really important to me, to make sure that I'm using my pain to help other people and to transform their lives. A lot of times when I'm dealing with someone with grief, we're talking about other life issues, not just grief, because it all gets mixed up together.
Hmm. It's the messiness that comes along with it, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people sometimes get confused because they will look at individuals like ourselves and go, man, they got something, they're doing something. Not everybody's going to do this sort of work. And I always
Right.
tell people, like, this is not meant for everyone, and that's
No.
okay, right?
Yep.
Our goal is to get you to use your pain in a way to where it's going to help build you, because there's something inside of your pain, right?
Yeah.
Through love, you know what I'm saying? When we lose people, there is pain that's going to be associated with it. It's the
Right.
yin and the yang. You can't have one without the other. And the
Correct.
only way that you're going to avoid that is if you go live out into a mountain or cave or somewhere and just avoid human contact,
Yep.
period, right? Not to allow people to get close to you, not allow yourself um, the human experience of having conversations, building friendships, finding all those different things. I know this, and I speak from experience because I honestly, I didn't want anything to do with people, right? I
Yeah.
was like, if this is the way that it needs to be, I don't want nothing to do with people. Allow me to, and this is, through a whole lot of prayer, I just kept saying, allow me to just go and find myself in a cave. I'll go in there and fight the bear for the cave now. You know what I'm saying? I'll go in there and fight him, but allow me to just go there and just be alone. I
Yeah.
had gotten conditioned a large part of my life with just being alone.
Mm.
Right. So, although I have I had good people that come along throughout my grief journey, which I did not understand. Then these were men that I had known, had really good relationships with. And, after that, after one of my major losses, I noticed that there was a lot of people that dissipated, but those who came, they had shared with me, Tony, I need to talk with you. And at that time, right, I was like, I didn't want to hear nothing that you had to say. You can't how you gonna relate to what I'm going through. No, you're gonna have to do a lot better than telling me you want to talk to me, because I may come out of the side of my face with something that you may not like. Now it's all out of anger. So please don't take it personally, but take it personally. Right. Yes. That's the way I was. But then they started sharing, man, when I lost my son, or, they started talking about these different things, and it changed my perspective, the way that I looked at life, because I realized that I wasn't by myself. And these individuals that came afterwards wanted to see me do good. Right. They wanted to let me know that I wasn't by myself. And I appreciate each and every last one of them, because it's a lonely, lonely road to feel that much pain. And I had this model. And I told my sister one time, I said, it's not natural to be in this much pain and still be alive.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, and if you're alive, right? Like that just shows how resilient, grieving people are. I hate when people treat grieving people like they're fragile, because they're not. Like, they're probably the most resilient people that I've come across, right? Like that, where they've undergone multiple losses and still wake up every morning and still get out of bed and still do the things that they need to do to move forward. So, that resiliency is like something that I know is in anyone that's lost anyone. There's a resiliency that is just like kind of unparalleled.
Right.
And then when you were also talking about, like the pain, it was Lauren's path. It was my sister's path to die young, right? Like, I think we all I'll get a little philosophical. I think we all come into this world with a lesson that we kind of need to learn, or an agreement. And hers was to, she was going to have a short life. And I think she, on some degree, I think, knew that. But then I'm like, okay, then what's my lesson in it, right? Like, what's my lesson to learn from this experience? And the gifts that have come out of her death have been absolutely incredible. I know for sure that if she hadn't passed, I would not have had the courage to do things on my own terms. I would have probably tried to go for that clinical PhD, and the whole field, I have my own feelings on mental health. The whole field from 1998, it was kind of a mess in 98. And I would have struggled through that just to like do what people do, have a 9-to-5 job with benefits and all of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't, if she hadn't passed, I definitely would not have had the courage to break out on my own and do what I knew in my heart was the right path for me. I also I really honor time, so that this way, because I know none of us knows how much time we all act like we're going to live forever sometimes. And I really honor my time more clearly now, between taking breaks and taking off and traveling and doing other things and then working and helping people. So I really honor my own time and know how important it is, because that's one of our resources that we cannot get back.
Very true.
I've been way more compassionate with people. Before she passed, I was like, I would think of myself first and then think of others second. But now I've put other people, like, to me, to be of service is really where what's important to me now. So so I have gotten a lot of great life lessons from her passing, and I still continue, even to this day, continue to get lessons from her death.
You know what? It's a learning. It's a continuous learning path, right?
Right.
And I think that's what fascinates me the most about the path of grief and understanding the different levels, the different
Yep.
pathways that's associated with it. Because again, like you said, there's so much to learn about
Yep.
it, right? And the human experience and how each and every last one of us will experience those things, which leads
Yep.
me to my next question. Like, you had said something in the beginning, of watching your parents, but, not having your grief validated after that loss. Can you
Yep.
take us back to what you saw with your parents? Because, I mean, we do look at our parents after
Hmm.
losing a child.
Yep.
It's horrific. And I never take anything away from no one because it's the relationship that we had. So all grief is validated in my world.
Yeah.
All of it. Not
Well,
one is greater. Depends on the individual. And
yep.
and I want always to respect that. And we talking to someone. I am someone who has experienced the various types of loss. And it's just it hits different a little
Yeah.
bit, depending on the type of year, right? And
Yeah.
where I'm at in my world, but also, where I show up in other people's worlds as well, right? I'm
Yeah.
able to pivot in conversation, but also to hold that space with them,
Right.
so they don't have to feel as if they have to take care. I don't need you to take care of me. It's not your
No.
job. It's my
Right.
job to show up to walk with you,
Yep.
right? And things like that. But let's go back to let's talk about that a little bit. What did you see
Right.
after?
So yeah, so as soon as she passed, like my parents pretty much shut down. Like they were not really emotionally available. I mean, and they weren't even aware of what they were doing.
Mhm,
So and there was a weird dynamic where they weren't emotionally available, but they were also overly worried about everything that I did. Like
mhm,
like I'd have to call them if I went like from my living room to my dining room. Like they'd be call me, when you get there. I'm like, Mom, I'm walking like 5 steps across. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much, right? Like, like she would want me to call her and text her and always she always needed to know exactly where I was at
mhm,
every given moment. Now, remember, I'm 26 at the time. I can't be texting my mom and my dad every 2 minutes like they want, and I just couldn't do it. So I had to set some like, they didn't know this, but I had to set some boundaries with them, and my boundaries were that if they were to text me and expect me to text right back, I would wait 20 minutes before I would text them because I didn't want them to be on top of me every minute of every day.
mhm,
They also you know, didn't understand that I couldn't express my grief in front of them because if I were to do that, then it would tear them up. And I didn't want to be another source of their pain, of their
mhm.
suffering. So
Understood.
I chose, I'm like, I got to deal with my grief on my own. And then once I had that sort of like a little bit figured out, then I could go back to them, but I can't use them as the place where I go to deal with my grief because they're dealing with their own grief. So I had to kind of separate and put a boundary, a border between the two of us, the three of us for a little while, just so that I can figure it out on my own. And even in the interim, they thought that I wasn't dealing with my grief. They're like, he's not dealing, he's shutting down and he's not go because I wasn't doing it with that in front of them.
Right.
And so they thought, oh, he's not doing. And I remember, maybe about 5 or 6 years after she passed, I was teaching yoga at a conference because I go to, I'm associated with the Compassionate Friends. So I go to their conferences and I'm of service. So I was teaching yoga at the grief conference this was probably going back like early 2000s. And my mom was like, oh, I guess he is dealing with his grief, just not in the way that we're dealing with our grief. So, yeah, so there was like a really, I had to create a pretty strong boundary between me and my parents during that time so that I can really get a handle on what I was feeling without their influence. Because part of the reason was that the way they were treating me was also part of the problem, right? Not being emotionally available for my wins, for my successes, and only focusing on their daughter who passed, my sister, right? Like it was even to this day, to be honest, they moved houses, but there's a room in their house right now that is dedicated to my sister. It's got her old furniture, it's got her dance shoes up, and she never lived in that house, but she has a room there. So they kind of, I want to say, made a little bit of a shrine to her, and and there's no room for me in that house. Like, I don't have my own room in their current home, but she does. So there was always that, like, thing within me where, like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still doing stuff. I'm still accomplishing things. But for a long time, I did not get any recognition from them for my life achievements that, because they were so worried about they were so into their own grief. Now, it's changed because about 6 or 7 years after she passed, my mom finally came around and said, two things. One was that I'm tired of being sad and depressed all the time. So let's go on a vacation together. So to create kind of new memories, which was a lot we did. And it was probably the first time that she laughed and smiled, probably in like 7 years or something like that. And the other thing was that she was realizing was that how much she kind of neglected me in those years as well, because she's like, she heard someone speak and she's like, did I do that? And I'm like, yes, you did. You did. And there's no hard, like, it's what I needed to go through, right? Like, I needed to follow my own path. It's what brought me here to this podcast today, right? Like, if she had coddled me or, had been different, then I also may not have had that strength and that courage to do other things. So, once again, it's one of those things. At the time, was it painful? Yes, but it's really created the person that I am now, and I wouldn't give that up for anything.
I love that. And my next question is, and I want to add to what you were just saying. My next question is, how was the relationships? Are you still friends with your sister's friends? Or how did those relationships? How did that affect those relationships?
So yeah, I think with any grief, not just sibling grief, like, your inner circles start to shift and change, right? Like, the thing that I noticed is that people that I thought that would understand and be there for me really didn't have any clue. And those that I didn't expect all of a sudden came in to be a really great support for me. Yes, I do connect, because we were only 2 years apart and we grew up like in a small town. I am connected to a couple of her friends, and every now and again, I think a couple of years ago, maybe during the pandemic for sure, we did a Zoom meeting on her birthday, and we brought all of her old friends in to come and talk and tell stories. I think they feel a little, on a day-to-day, they don't always feel comfortable talking to me specifically about her, because they don't know, even though I've given them permission, and it really fills my heart when I do hear them talk about her. But I think people feel a little uncomfortable on a day-to-day doing that, because they don't know how it's going to affect the family. And I think people are very cautious about that. And I think as grievers, we need to give people permission to do that, because I know my mom loves to hear the stories. I've seen a couple of pictures lately that I've never seen before, and this is 25 years ago. I thought, oh, I know everything, I've heard all the stories. No, I haven't. And they're people are holding on to them, and they're not sharing them. And I would love to hear them. And, I give them permission. But as I said, on a day-to-day, I think people feel a little awkward talking about her.
Understood. Definitely understood. And it's that has been one of the solid lines across the board. People don't know what to say to us, right?
Right.
And just to add to what you were saying about your parents, and I'm just speaking from a point of view of a bereaved parent as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's fear, because I listened, I heard what you were saying, how they were on you. That fear of having it happen again is so strong that most parents will become very, very protective over the children or child that they have, that they don't want to experience. They're like, no, I need to know what you're doing, man. You know what I'm saying? You're walking, you're taking 5 steps. No, anything. It's the thoughts, right? That run through our heads. Like, our world, just like your world, has changed.
Yep.
Changed in such a dramatic way to where we don't know if our hearts can take hearing that another one of our children has passed. And I've met someone who has lost 4. So can you, and it's just like, whoa, I've lost 1, right? And I lost my brother. And this is like, look, here's a secret that I don't tell my sister, right? I'm very protective. I give her space, but there's not a day that don't go by where I think to myself, I need to just let her know I love her.
Yep.
Right. And it's I try not to live with that fear, but my sister is my best friend, right?
Yep.
We've already lost our younger brother. We've already lost our parents. It's just she and I now, as far as the older siblings, and she has nieces. So I'm always like, man, I want to call and check up on her just to make sure that she's doing okay, right? But I don't want to be the overprotective brother.
Yeah. Well, and there's two things. Like, one is that, listen, I went through that whole, like, I can't die. I can't put my parents through another kid. Like, I put a lot of value on my own life, because I saw what my parents went through with my sister. I couldn't put them through that again. Like, so the fear was in me as well. I didn't need them reminding me that the fear was in, like, like, I knew very well every time I went out, I'm like, oh, I got to be careful. And, and I knew I had some, those weird, like, thoughts that pop up that are not logical, but you can't stop them anyway. So, mine was that every time the phone rang, I was like, oh, who's dead now? Because I found out about my sister's death via the telephone. And so every time the phone rang, I'm like, oh, someone's dead now. Like, and I know, I'm like, I know it's not, I knew it wasn't logical at the time, but it's that grief brain that a lot of people talk about where you got, I couldn't control it. Ring. All right. And so it was, all those things that happened, like that fear and stuff like that was already within me. And I didn't need that reminder. And the other thing too, is that, right, like, my sister passed in a car accident. She was here one day, gone the next. I didn't have time to say goodbye or I love you one last time. Well, actually, our last conversation was an argument because I was supposed to go see her like 2 days before she died, and she said, don't come. I'm like, but I'm driving past your house. Let me just pop in and see you. She's like, no. And she wouldn't give me any explanation. We had a little argument, and then, like, we hung up, and then 2 days later she's gone. I didn't have that opportunity. So I really understand that, like, we need to tell the people that are alive now how we feel about them. Like, don't wait. Don't hold your emotions back. Don't hold that love back, because, and not from fear, just from letting people know how you feel about them in the moment.
Right. I do make it a point to do that to people, right? What I'm saying? People that I've met and, like yourself, I would tell you, man, I love you, man. My friends, right? What I'm saying? People that know me, I do make it a point to let them know that I do love you, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to not have the opportunity to say it.
Yeah.
And it's all out from my heart. I genuinely love people.
Yeah.
You know, even those that have done me wrong. Hey, I still love you. Right? I don't want nothing bad to happen to you. You know, I just do have boundaries with certain people where I go, you know what, I can love you from afar, but I still love you nonetheless, and I do wish you the best. Now, those that are around me, I make sure, hey man, I love. That's you. You heard the phone when I was talking to my
I
buddy.
did.
Right? I told him, man, I love you, man. Right? You know what I'm saying? And that's just comes with an understanding, especially being in this field. I do understand the importance of letting people know how you feel about them, right? Because I don't want our last conversations to be, oh man, Tony, you know, no. I don't want that, right? I want to normalize, you know what I'm saying? Hey, I want to let you know how I feel, right? You know what I'm saying? Because tomorrow's not promised. The next few minutes aren't promised. But that's a reality that I live with, right? You know, and then that goes back to what I was saying earlier. That's why I work so hard to do the things that I do, because I know tomorrow's not promised to me. It's not promised to anyone, right? And I want to make sure to always remind people, celebrate the life.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's okay it's okay to be reminded of the passing, but celebrate the life, celebrate the memories. I want to create good memories. That's why I always start off my podcast. Hopefully you guys are somewhere creating good memories, smiling and things like that, right? You know, because that's important. That's totally important, right? You know, and when you do, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when your world does change, you know, be reminded of those things that made you smile. Reminded of those conversations, whether if it's an argument or not, right? But be reminded of them, and you know, and remember the times that you have.
Because I think.
Go ahead.
I think with grief too, people focus on that one moment of passing rather than the 10 years, the 20 years, the 30 years of life that they had with them, and that one moment of passing is just, it overtakes everything. But it's really about like remembering how they lived, not just how they died. And you know, and me getting to tell Lauren's story here and in my groups and to different people, like it brings her back to life again in my own heart, you know, like, so that people that never met her get to know her as well. So and it's important to make sure the people that you surround yourself are uplifting you rather than pulling you down. Because in the grief world, it can be a misery loves company where like, and I talk about it like a hole, right? Like when one of us is in the hole, we can either go down into the hole and be with the person, or we can stand at the top of the hole and lend our hand down to pull the person up. And so notice the people in your circle. Are they pulling you? Are they keeping you and keeping you in the hole, or are they lending a hand to pull you up? Make sure that you've got someone outside the hole pulling you up, because you know, there a lot of people would love to come down into that hole with you, and just really notice the people that do that.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I wish I had somebody that was down in the hole with me, man. But it's the process, right? You know what I'm saying? And I think that's how we get into this area, right? You know, because although I wish there was somebody down in the hole with me, I am truly grateful that I was able to be down in the hole by myself, because it was a learning process. You know, often references to my dark whale. Right? You know what I'm saying? I was down in the well. I looked up, all I see is this little glimmer of light. And I'm looking up and I'm begging and pleading for one or two things: someone to drop a rope and help me climb up, or to bury me. I was either which I was good with either which way it went, right? And then you know, and what ended up happening was that, you know, like, it was as if someone was, every time they dropped the rope down, I go to lift it up, and as I'm lifting it up, they would pull up the rope and kick dirt down on top of my head, right?
Okay.
There was something inside of me. It was just like, okay, okay, just keep doing it then. Just keep doing it. Then they would drop the rope and I would jump up, and what I didn't realize, Jason, is that every time I did, that dirt that was on top of me, I was pushing down beneath my feet.
Yep.
Right. And it was learning, right? It was going through that grieving process. And then over a period of time, which seemed like forever, which was only maybe a matter of months, I'm sitting at the top of my hole. And I've become something different. I'm bruised, beaten, battered, dirty, and I'm tired. But now I'm sitting on top of this hole that I've just filled in this deep well. I got all of this knowledge. And I'm looking around going, all right, I see a hole over there. Let me just go over there and peek my head inside of there and see who's down inside of there. And like you said, reaching your hand down and going, hey, brother, hey, sister, here's my hand. If you want it, I'll help you come up.
Yep.
And sitting in that storm, that whirlwind of grief.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm also a firm believer. If I see you going through a storm, I will not intervene.
Mm-hmm.
I will not enter. And the reason why I say that, hopefully it makes sense to people, I won't intervene because that storm is not for me. It's for you to learn. It's for you to clear this thing out. Now, I'm not going to let you go too far. I will throw in some water. Hey, throw some water on your face, drink it, get you a sip. Here's some food. You know what I'm saying? I can't do the storm for you, but I can make sure that you understand and see a glimpse of me outside of your storm, just so you know that I'm still here.
Yep.
Right. You know what I'm saying? I can't get up for you, but I can sit down with you.
Right. And if you did, even if you tried, it wouldn't serve them. Like if you were to be able to open up the storm and have them come out, right, and let them avoid the struggle, then that wouldn't serve them either, because we all have to go through our own struggle, our own challenges, and that's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us resilient. That's what makes us, these amazing, people.
That's that compassion and that empathy that comes along with it, because I'm always excited to see who you are when you come out. Yeah. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm excited to see how you weather your storm, your grief storm, and the things that you don't need anymore. I'm excited for the person, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm excited to see what you've gotten rid of and what you've gained, because I'm a student, like I said, and I always say that I'm a student. I want to know, I want to sit down with you and see what you've learned. Right. You know what I'm saying? And have these conversations with Jason and so many people, man, because that's a beautiful part, because
I think that's
educated people.
Yep. And I think that's why it's really important to make sure you get a role model, like someone who's been where you are, but is where you want to be, because, because they have the map, they have the map for how to get from where you are to where they are. Even when I talk about my story, listen, it's been 25 years since I lost my sister. It's been 25 years of learning and growing. It didn't all happen at once, but if I had someone to like that had said to me in the beginning, listen, you got to find a way of dealing with your grief. Here's a guide on how to do it. I would have completely appreciated it. And that's what actually, got me in the ring. That's what forced me to come into the ring, because I want to be that guide for people. I want to be that role model so that people can see, like, oh, this guy can, he's overcome his loss and his, thriving. And I want to be that. I want to have that in my experience. So, that's why I've chosen to guide people, not to take away their challenges, but to give them tools to navigate them in a quicker way than they would do it on their own.
Right. We get to write the blueprint for
them.
Yeah. What's 100%. Next for you? What's next for you? You got some things coming.
I got lots of good stuff going on. So one thing is going to be and I was just working on it this morning. I'm going to be in the chapter of a book called Faces of Grief, which is coming out in December. It's going to be about 20, I think it's 27 stories of different grieving people, anything from, widows to non-death related grief. I'm tell my sibling story. There's, loss of a child, all kinds of different losses in the book. Really exciting. I can't wait for that to come out. We've been working hard on it. We're starting to put some stuff up on social media. The cover just came out like a week ago, and I'm really excited about that. I'm also going to be a keynote speaker at the Compassionate Friends Conference in New Orleans in July. It's coming up in a month. I'm going to be doing speaking about the bereaved sibling end of grief. What else have I got going on? I do work one-on-one with people, I'm hoping to get a group program together. That's sort of the next thing on my agenda probably start after the summer, after I get through some of my speaking gigs. I've been creating a program for an organization in Buffalo, New York, that to help their sibling population. So I got a lot of different avenues going on.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. I'm always excited, and let me know how I can support that as well.
Yep.
And in your journey, how can I help get the word out there? Just let me know.
You're doing it right now.
We can do so much more, though, right? I can do so much more on by using my platform in a great way, because it's never about me. I want to make sure that I am doing my part to not only to support those who have been bereaved, but to make sure that people are aware of the resources and individuals that are out there, the amazing people that are doing amazing work. This is just one part of it, right?
Yep.
And before I let you go, if you can leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
All right. So first thing is always take action, right? Like if there's something that you need to do, right, you got to take action on it. Like you were saying earlier, like when you have these ideas and then you automatically take action. So don't just knowledge is only potential power. Is when you take it action, that's when the power really comes. So if you're thinking about, starting up a physical fitness routine, go out and do it. If you're thinking about, monitoring your mind, like take some courses, take any sort of small action. That's what will get you results, not just sitting there talking about it or preparing to do it or thinking about doing it. Just do something even small. Like if you want to get in better shape, maybe drink an ounce of water or eat an apple instead of a cookie. Try small changes and then make them habitual.
I love that. Habitual changes.
Yeah, because we overwhelm ourselves, and when we overwhelm ourselves, we don't take that action, and that'll be the cure all. Taking that action, whatever that action may be, no matter how small.
Yes, mindset. Is changing the mindset and changing your actions, building healthier habits, but surrounding, like you said, Jason, surrounding yourself with people that can uplift you, that care about you, and that's willing to tell you the truth as you go along your journey. Right. And and being honest with yourself, holding yourself accountable, but also understanding those habits can be corrected, and all those beautiful things. Now, how can people find you?
So they can go to my website, which is somaticgrieftherapy.com. All of my social media, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Those are the three that I spend most time on. There's actually a grief in your body assessment that you could take, which will hop you onto my email list. So if you go to somaticgrieftherapy.com, it'll have all of my info there. If you're a bereaved sibling, I have a link at the bottom of my website, free peer support for bereaved siblings specifically. So if you're in that category, please, hop on my list. We send out I send out an email every single week with information about the grief, about how I'm dealing with my grief or some sort of grief topic, plus like all the links to the meetings. So definitely sign up for that and get on the list. Even if you're just going to read the emails, it's a little short, 2-3 paragraph email that I send out every single Sunday. So, which I'll have to do a little bit later today because today is Sunday.
This is very true. This is very true. And what better way to spend it with, great conversation.
Yeah.
And helping other people out, Now, with that being said, Jason, I want to say, brother, thank you for being up here today. Thank you for sharing your story, your insight, your wisdom. Just truly phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that we were able to make this happen.
Yeah.
And so for everyone else who's been tuning in, everyone who's tuning in on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, thank you guys for tuning in. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, head over there to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And, we do have some up and coming things coming, go check out in December, The Faces of Grief.
Yep.
I know the person, Samantha Ruth, big shout out to her and helping putting all that stuff together. Kate Mollison, Faith, Sage, so many other people that are doing amazing things out there as well. And with that being said, I am Tony Lynch. We're going to close off this episode, but stay tuned. We have 3 episodes coming today, so we have some more people that we're going to be talking with. Hopefully, you guys get the chance to tune in with those as well. So, and the next episode is going to be starting at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and hopefully, you guys enjoy that guest as well. And so, guys, we'll see you guys in the next one. I love you. Thank you for your support. And if you know anyone who would benefit from these conversations that we have, please share this with them. And I appreciate you. See you in the next one.
We appreciate you too, Tony.
Thank you. Peace.